Vel had served on human ships for 12 years, but he still did not understand them. He stood in the corner of the observation deck, watching the stars pass by through the great window. His 4 arms were folded across his thin chest, and his compound eyes reflected the distant lights of 1,000 suns. He was small, barely reaching the waist of most humans, and his body was covered in a hard shell the color of dried mud. The other species in the galaxy called his kind insects, and meant it as an insult. Vel had learned long ago not to take offense. Taking offense required believing you deserved better, and the Morath had never been taught to believe that. The door behind him opened, and he heard footsteps. He knew those footsteps. They belonged to Captain Una Park. "Vel," she said, her voice warm. "I thought I might find you here." He turned and bowed his head slightly. "Captain, do you need translation services?" She laughed softly. It was a strange sound to Vel. Other species rarely laughed around Morath, and when they did, it was usually at them, not with them. But Una's laugh was different. It sounded like she was genuinely happy to see him. "No translations tonight," she said. She walked to the window and stood beside him, looking out at the stars. "We're having a celebration in the mess hall. Lieutenant Tay's birthday. There's cake." Vel tilted his head. "I am aware of the celebration, Captain. I did not wish to intrude." "Intrude?" She looked down at him with a confused expression. "Vel, you're crew. You're not intruding. You're invited." There it was again. That word. Crew. Una used it often when speaking to him. And every time, Vel felt something strange in his chest. He did not have a word for the feeling in his own language. The Morath language had many words for fear, for obedience, for duty, but it had no words for belonging. "I thank you, Captain," he said carefully, "but Morath do not celebrate. We have nothing worth celebrating." Una was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was softer. "Who told you that?" "It is simply true. Our world is dying. Our sun grows cold. We number less than 100,000 in the entire galaxy. We survive by serving others. That is our purpose. That is all we are." Una crouched down so that her eyes were level with his. Vel found this uncomfortable. No one had ever done this before. Other species preferred to look down at him. It reminded everyone of their proper place. "Vel," she said, "I want you to listen to me. You have served on this ship for 12 years. You have translated for us in 37 diplomatic missions. You have saved lives with your work. Last year, during the negotiations with the Ore Syndicate, you caught a mistranslation that would have started a war. Do you remember?" "I was only doing my duty, Captain." "No. You went beyond your duty. You worked for 3 days without sleep to review every document. You found the error. You fixed it. Because of you, millions of people are alive today." She reached out and very gently touched his shoulder. Vel flinched. He was not used to being touched except in violence. "That is worth celebrating. You are worth celebrating." Vel did not know what to say. In 40 years of life, no one had ever spoken to him this way. Una stood up. "Come to the party, Vel. That's an order from your captain." She smiled when she said it, so Vel knew it was not really an order. But he followed her anyway, because for the first time in his life he wanted to. The mess hall was loud and bright. Lieutenant Tay Kang stood at the center of a group of crew members, laughing as someone told a joke. He was a tall man with broad shoulders and a scar across his chin from a battle he never talked about. When he saw Vel enter with the captain, his face broke into a wide grin. "Vel, finally, I was starting to think you didn't like me." "I have great respect for you, Lieutenant," Vel said quickly. "I did not mean to give offense." Tay walked over and clapped Vel on the back. The gesture was gentle by human standards, but it still nearly knocked Vel off his feet. Relax, friend. I'm joking. Come, sit with us. Dr. Hana made something special for you. Vel's antennae twitched. For me? Dr. Hana Yoon appeared from the crowd, carrying a small plate. She was a young woman with kind eyes and hair that she always kept tied back in a neat bun. She spent most of her time in the medical bay, studying alien biology and treating injuries. But she always made time to talk to Vel. She was the first person who had ever asked him about his home world, his family, his dreams. He had not known how to answer. Morath were not supposed to have dreams. I did some research, Hana said, setting the plate in front of him. Morath can't digest most human food, but I found a recipe that should work. It's made from mineral compounds and processed algae. I know it doesn't sound fancy, but I hope you like it. Vel stared at the plate. The food was arranged carefully, with obvious thought and care. No one had ever prepared food for him before. On other ships, he had eaten whatever scraps he could find. Sometimes he went days without eating because no one thought to provide for him. He was a Morath. He was supposed to take care of himself. He was not worth the trouble. Dr. Yoon, he said, and his voice wavered. You did this for me? Of course, she said, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. You're part of our family, Vel. Family. Another word the Morath had no translation for. Vel looked around the mess hall. The humans were eating, laughing, talking. Some of them waved at him. Others called out greetings. No one looked at him with disgust or indifference. No one treated him like he was invisible. He did not understand these people. He did not understand why they cared. He did not understand why they saw him when every other species in the galaxy looked right through him. But for the first time in 40 years, Vel felt something that might have been happiness. He picked up the food Hana had made for him and took a small bite. It was not delicious by any standard, but it was the best thing he had ever tasted, because someone had made it just for him. Across the room, Captain Yuna watched with a small smile on her face. Lieutenant Tay raised his glass. To Vel, he said, the best translator in the galaxy. The crew cheered. Vel did not know what to do, so he simply bowed his head and hoped they could not see the moisture gathering in his compound eyes. He was only a Morath. He was only an insect. But tonight, on this ship, surrounded by these strange and wonderful humans, he felt like something more. He felt like he mattered. The space station, called Axis Prime, hung in the darkness between stars. It was a neutral place, built by no single species, owned by no single government. Here, enemies could meet without war. Here, peace was possible. At least, that was what everyone believed. Captain Yuna stood on the observation platform, watching the delegations arrive. The Caliph came first, their tall bodies wrapped in robes of silver and gold. They moved with the pride of an ancient empire, their faces calm and cold. Behind them came the syndicate of Or, smaller beings with gray skin and sharp teeth. The two powers had been fighting for centuries. Billions had died in their wars. Now, at last, they had agreed to talk. Earth had been asked to mediate. Yuna knew why. Humans were seen as young, naive, and unimportant. Neither side feared Earth. Neither side respected Earth. That made humans perfect for the job. They were too weak to be a threat. Yuna did not mind. She had learned long ago that being underestimated was a kind of power. The delegations are settled, Lieutenant Tay reported, walking up beside her. Both sides are unhappy, which means we're doing our job right. Yuna almost smiled. Any problems? Nothing major. The Caliph complained about their rooms. The syndicate complained about the Caliph. Same as always. He paused. Vel is working with both translation teams. He's the only one they both trust. Because he's Morath, Yuna said quietly. They don't see him as a threat. They don't see him at all. Their mistake, Tay said. On the lower levels of the station, Vel moved through the corridors like a shadow. He had spent his life being invisible, and now that skill served him well. He translated for the Caliph in the morning and the Syndicate in the afternoon. He carried messages between diplomats. He fetched documents and delivered food. No one thanked him. No one noticed him. That was exactly how it had always been. But now, after 12 years with the humans, the silence felt heavier. He had tasted something different. He had felt what it was like to be seen. Going back to invisibility was harder than he had expected. On the third night of negotiations, Vel was cleaning a conference room when he heard voices. The room was supposed to be empty. The talks had ended hours ago. But someone was speaking in the shadows, and Vel's antennae picked up every word. There were two Caliph, their voices low and urgent. Vel recognized one of them as a senior advisor to the Caliph delegation. The other was a military officer whose name Vel did not know. "The plan is simple," the advisor said. "Tomorrow, during the final ceremony, we strike. The syndicate leaders will die, their guards will die, and the evidence will point to the humans." Vel's blood turned to ice. "The humans will be blamed," the officer agreed. "The syndicate will demand revenge. Earth will burn, and in the chaos, we will finally crush the ore once and for all." "Two enemies destroyed with a single blow," the advisor said, and there was cruel satisfaction in his voice. "The humans are fools. They came here thinking they could make peace. They will leave as war criminals, if they leave at all." Vel pressed himself against the wall, his heart's pounding. He was shaking so badly that his shell rattled. He had to stay quiet. He had to stay invisible. If they found him, they would kill him without hesitation. A Morath's life was worth less than nothing. The Caliph finished speaking and left through a side door. Vel remained frozen in the darkness for a long time, trying to understand what he had heard. The humans were going to die. Captain Yuna was going to die. Lieutenant Tay, Dr. Hana, the crew of the Horizon's Edge, all of them. They would be murdered, and then they would be blamed for murders they did not commit. Earth itself might fall. Vel thought about staying silent. It was the safe choice, the smart choice. If he reported what he heard, the Caliph would know it was him. There were no other Morath on the station. He would be arrested, tortured, and executed. The Interstellar Coalition would not protect him. No one protected Morath. That was simply how the galaxy worked. But then he thought about the mess hall on the Horizon's Edge. He thought about Hana making food just for him. He thought about Tay calling him friend. He thought about Yuna looking him in the eyes and telling him he mattered. They had shown him kindness when no one else would. They had treated him like family. And now they were in danger. Vel made his choice. He found Dr. Hana in her quarters, reviewing medical reports. When she saw him at her door, she smiled. "Vel, come in. Is everything all right?" He told her everything. The words spilled out of him in a rush, his voice trembling. He told her about the conspiracy, the assassination plot, the plan to frame humanity. He told her that he was probably going to die for this, but he did not care, because she had made him food and called him family, and he would not let her be destroyed. Hana listened without interrupting. When he finished, her face was pale but calm. "Thank you, Vel," she said softly. "You may have just saved us all." She took him to Captain Yuna. Within hours, the plot was exposed. Earth's security forces moved quickly and quietly. The Caliph extremists were arrested. The evidence was presented to the coalition. The peace talks continued, and the assassination never happened. But there was a price. The Caliph Empire was humiliated. Their leaders demanded someone pay for the insult. They could not punish the humans without admitting their own guilt, so they chose a different target. They demanded Vel. "The Morath spy must be executed," the Caliph ambassador declared before the Coalition Council. "He violated the sacred trust of translation. He listened to private conversations. He must die." The coalition agreed. Morath had no legal protections. Morath had no rights. Vel's life was worth nothing in the eyes of galactic law. Captain Yuna received the orders on the bridge of her ship. She read them twice, then set the document down very carefully. "They want us to surrender Vel," she said. Lieutenant Tay stood beside her, his jaw tight. "He saved our lives. He saved the entire mission, and they want to kill him for it. Those are the orders." Tay met her eyes. "What are you going to do?" "Captain?" Yuna looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, the Kaleth fleet was waiting. Somewhere out there, the coalition was watching. Everyone expected her to do the logical thing, the smart thing, the thing that any reasonable captain would do. She thought about Vel standing alone in that conference room, shaking with fear, choosing to save them anyway. "Call a crew meeting," she said quietly. "Everyone, no exceptions." Tay nodded, and something like hope flickered in his eyes. "Yes, Captain." The crew of the Horizon's Edge gathered in the main cargo bay. There were 147 of them, standing in rows between the storage containers and cargo lifts. They were engineers and scientists, soldiers and medics, navigators and cooks. They came from different countries on Earth, spoke different languages, believed different things. But in this moment, they were one crew, and they were waiting for their captain to speak. Yuna stood before them on a raised platform. Beside her stood Lieutenant Tay and Dr. Hana. In the corner, almost hidden in the shadows, stood Vel. He had tried to stay away, but Tay had found him and brought him here. "You need to see this," Tay had said. "You need to understand." Vel did not understand. He did not understand any of this. "You all know why we're here," Yuna began. Her voice was calm and clear, carrying to every corner of the bay. 3 days ago, Vel uncovered a plot to assassinate the Syndicate delegation and frame Earth for the crime. Because of his courage, that plot failed. Because of him, we are alive. Because of him, Earth is safe. A murmur ran through the crowd. Many of them looked toward Vel. He wanted to disappear into the wall. "The Kaleth Empire is not grateful," Yuna continued. "They are embarrassed, they are angry, and they have demanded that we surrender Vel to them for execution." She paused, letting the words sink in. "The Interstellar Coalition has agreed. They have ordered us to hand him over. If we refuse, the Kaleth will consider it an act of war. We will be expelled from the coalition. Earth may face sanctions, blockades, or worse." The cargo bay was silent. 147 people stood perfectly still, waiting. "I am not going to make this decision alone," Yuna said. "This affects all of us. This affects our families back home. This affects everything we have worked for. So I am asking you, as your captain and as your fellow human being, what do you think we should do?" For a long moment, no one moved. Then Lieutenant Tay stepped forward. He was the second in command, and when he spoke, his voice rang like a bell. "Vel saved us, every single one of us. He risked his life, knowing it would probably cost him everything. And he did it because we showed him kindness. He did it because we treated him like family." Tay turned to face the crew. "I will not betray that. I will not hand over a member of this crew to be murdered. I would rather fight the entire galaxy." Dr. Hana stepped forward next. "When I joined this ship, I took an oath to protect life, all life, not just human life, not just the lives the galaxy considers valuable." She looked at Vel with tears in her eyes. "Vel is my friend. He is my patient. He is under my care. And I will not let him die." One by one, the crew began to speak. An engineer named Jisoo raised her hand. "My grandmother survived a war because a stranger helped her escape. She always told me that kindness must be repaid with kindness. Vel showed us kindness. I vote to protect him." A young pilot named Minho stood up. "The galaxy thinks we're weak because we care about people. Maybe they're right. Maybe caring makes us vulnerable. But I would rather be weak and good than strong and cruel. I vote to protect him." A security officer named Suji crossed her arms. "The Caliph think they can push us around because we're new to the stars. They think we'll sacrifice our own to save ourselves. I say we show them what humans are made of. I vote to protect him." Voice after voice rose in the cargo bay. Young and old, men and women, officers and enlisted crew. Every single one of them voted the same way. Not one person suggested surrendering Vel. Not one person chose the safe path. Vel watched from the shadows, and he could not stop the tears that ran from his compound eyes. He had never seen anything like this. In 40 years of life, in 12 years of service on this ship, he had never truly understood what made humans different from other species. Now, finally, he did. They chose loyalty over safety. They chose honor over survival. They chose him, a worthless Morath, over their own future. Captain Yuna looked out at her crew, and for just a moment, her composure cracked. Her voice wavered when she spoke. "Thank you," she said. "All of you. Thank you." Then her expression hardened, and she was the captain again. "Lieutenant Tay, open a channel to the Caliph fleet." The main view screen flickered to life. A Caliph commander appeared, his silver robes gleaming, his face cold and arrogant. Behind him, the shadows of warships loomed in the darkness of space. There were 30 of them, each one powerful enough to destroy the horizon's edge 10 times over. "Captain Park," the commander said, "I trust you have prepared the prisoner for transfer." "There is no prisoner," Yuna said. "There is only a member of my crew." The commander's eyes narrowed. "Do not play games with me, human. Surrender the Morath or face the consequences." "Vel saved my ship," Yuna said. "He saved my crew. He saved the peace talks. He is not a criminal. He is a hero, and I will not surrender him to you or anyone else." The commander laughed. It was a harsh, ugly sound. "You would start a war over an insect? You would sacrifice your world for a creature worth less than the dirt beneath my feet?" Yuna's voice was ice. "Vel is not an insect. He is a citizen of Earth. As of 1 hour ago, the Earth government has granted him full citizenship and all the protections that come with it. If you execute him, you will not be killing a Morath. You will be killing a human. And I promise you, Commander, Earth will respond accordingly." The commander's face twisted with disbelief. "You cannot be serious. Your government would never—" "They already have." Yuna held up a document, the official seal of Earth clearly visible. The vote was unanimous. Every nation on Earth agreed. Vel is one of us now, and we protect our own. Silence fell over the channel. The Caliph commander stared at Yuna as if he could not believe what he was seeing. His ships were stronger. His fleet was larger. By every logical measure, he should have been in control. But something in Yuna's eyes made him hesitate. "You are bluffing," he said, but his voice was less certain now. "Try me," Yuna said. "Fire on this ship. Take Vel by force, and find out what happens when you harm someone Earth has sworn to protect." She leaned forward, her gaze burning like a star. "We are a young species, Commander. We have not been in space for long, but we have fought wars since the beginning of our history. We have survived plagues and famines and disasters that should have destroyed us. We are still here, and we will always protect the people we love, no matter the cost." The commander stared at her for a long, tense moment. Then he looked away. "This is not over," he said. "The Caliph Empire will remember this insult." "I hope you do," Yuna said. "I hope you remember what happens when you threaten someone under Earth's protection. I hope you tell every species in the galaxy. Let them know, Earth does not abandon its own. Ever." The channel closed. The Caliph fleet, slowly and reluctantly, began to withdraw. In the cargo bay, the crew erupted into cheers. People hugged each other, crying and laughing at the same time. They had done it. They had faced down an empire, and they had won. But Vel did not cheer. He stood in the shadows, overwhelmed by emotions he could not name. He was a citizen of Earth now. He was protected. He was valued. He was home. Dr. Hana found him there, tears still streaming down his face. She knelt beside him and took his small hand in hers. "Welcome to the family, Vel," she said softly. And for the first time in his life, Vel believed her. The story spread across the galaxy like fire through dry grass. In the great halls of the Calith Empire, advisors whispered about the human captain who had defied their fleet. In the dark corners of Syndicate space, merchants traded rumors about the species that had risked war for an insect. On 1,000 worlds in 100 languages, beings spoke the name of Earth with confusion, with mockery, with anger, and in the shadows, where the forgotten species lived, they spoke the name of Earth with something else entirely: hope. On the mining colonies of the Outer Rim, where the Dreth worked 18-hour shifts for masters who never learned their names, workers gathered in secret to share the news. The humans had saved a Morath. The humans had called him family. The humans had made him a citizen. On the servant worlds of the inner systems, where the Kali cleaned the homes of species who considered them barely more than animals, children whispered the story to each other before sleep. The humans had protected someone small. The humans had stood against an empire. The humans had won. On the dying moon where the last of the Vexi lived, ancient elders looked up at the stars and wondered if perhaps, after all these centuries, someone might finally care. The interstellar coalition did not understand. "They are mad," the Calith ambassador declared at the next council meeting. "They have destabilized the entire region for the sake of a worthless creature. This is proof that humans are too emotional, too irrational to be trusted with power." "They are dangerous," the syndicate representative agreed. "Their attachment to lesser species suggests a fundamental instability in their society. We should limit their influence before it spreads." "They are weak," another delegate added. "Sentiment makes them vulnerable. Eventually, this foolishness will destroy them." Earth's ambassador, a man named Seok Ryu, listened to the criticism in silence. He was an old man with gray hair and calm eyes, and he had served in the diplomatic corps for 40 years. He had seen many things. He had learned many lessons, and he knew something that the elder species did not. He knew that what they called weakness, humans called strength. When it was his turn to speak, he stood slowly and looked around the council chamber. "You say we are emotional," he said. "You are correct. We are. We feel love and loyalty and gratitude. We feel pain when those we care about are hurt. We feel joy when we can help someone in need." He paused. "You call these things weaknesses. We call them the foundation of civilization." "Pretty words," the Calith ambassador sneered. "But words do not win wars." "No," Seok agreed. "But they build something stronger than any war can destroy. They build trust. They build alliances. They build families that span the stars." He smiled, and there was something knowing in his eyes. "You are afraid of us, Ambassador. Not because we are dangerous, but because we have something you do not. We have the loyalty of every forgotten species in this galaxy, and that, I think, frightens you more than any weapon ever could." The council fell silent. No one had ever spoken to the elder species this way. No one had ever dared. 6 months passed. The galaxy continued to turn, and slowly, quietly, everything began to change. On the horizon's edge, Vel struggled with his new life. He was a citizen of Earth now. He had papers that said so. He had rights that protected him. He had a crew that loved him. But he did not know how to live with any of it. For 40 years, he had been invisible. He had been a tool, a servant, a thing to be used and discarded. Now, suddenly, people saw him. They smiled at him. They asked his opinion. They treated him as though his thoughts and feelings mattered. It was terrifying. Dr. Hana found him one night in the medical bay, curled up in a corner with his arms wrapped around his thin body. He was shaking, and when she approached, he flinched away. "Vel," she said softly, kneeling beside him. "What's wrong?" He could not look at her. "I do not know how to do this," he whispered. "I do not know how to be worth something. My whole life, I was taught that I was nothing, that my only value was in my service. Now you tell me I matter, that I am family, that I am loved. But I do not know how to believe it. I do not know how to stop waiting for it to end." Hana was quiet for a long moment. Then she sat down beside him, her back against the cold wall of the medical bay. "Do you want to know why we saved you, Vel?" "Because I warned you about the plot. Because I was useful." "No." She shook her head firmly. "We would have saved you even if you had done nothing. We would have saved you even if you had no skills, no value, no purpose. Do you know why?" Vel finally looked at her. His compound eyes were wet with tears. "No," he said. "I do not understand." "Because you were kind to us," Hana said simply. 12 years ago, when you first came aboard this ship, you were quiet and scared, and you expected us to treat you like every other species had. But you still helped us. You still worked hard. You still cared about doing a good job, even though no one had ever cared about you." She reached out and took his hand. "We saved you because you are good, Vel. Not because you are useful. Not because you warned us about the plot. But because you have a good heart, and we could see it from the very beginning." Vel's breath caught in his throat. "But I am only a Morath." "You are Vel," Hana said. "You are our friend, you are family, and you will never be invisible to us again. Not ever." Something broke inside Vel then. Something that had been locked away for 40 years, held back by fear and pain and loneliness. He leaned against Hana and wept, and she held him without saying another word. He cried for a very long time. And when he was finished, he felt different, lighter, as if a weight he had carried his whole life had finally been lifted. A week later, a message arrived from Vel's home world. It was the first official communication between the Morath and any other species in over 200 years. The Morath had no government, no leaders, no voice in galactic affairs. They were too few, too scattered, too broken to organize. But the elders of the remaining colonies had gathered together, and they had sent a single question to the government of Earth. The question was simple. What do you want from us in return? Ambassador Seok Ryu read the message in his office on Earth. He thought about it for a long time. Then he wrote his reply. "Nothing," he said. "We want nothing from you. Loyalty is not a transaction. It is a recognition of what someone is worth. Vel is worth protecting, and so are you." The message was sent. And across the galaxy, on a dying world orbiting a fading star, the Morath elders read it together in silence. Then, for the first time in living memory, they began to cry. Not tears of sorrow, not tears of fear, but tears of hope, long buried and finally set free. The ripple had reached them at last. 10 years had passed since the day the horizon's edge faced down the Kalith fleet. 10 years since a human captain had looked into the face of an empire and refused to blink. 10 years since the galaxy had learned what humans meant when they said family. Everything had changed. Earth was no longer a small, young world on the edge of known space. It had become something the elder species had never imagined. A sanctuary. Dozens of forgotten species had come seeking protection. The Dreth miners had fled their cruel masters and found work in human factories where they were paid fair wages and treated with respect. The Kali servants had escaped their chains and built new lives in human cities where no one looked down on them. The Vexi, once dying on their barren moon, had been relocated to a green world where their children could grow up under open skies. None of them had been asked to give anything in return. Earth had offered help freely, without conditions, without demands. And in gratitude, these species had offered something the elder races could not understand. They had offered loyalty. The Morath were the greatest example of all. Their dying sun had been stabilized by human engineers who worked for 3 years without rest. Their empty cities had been rebuilt by human architects who learned their customs and honored their traditions. Their children, once born into despair, now grew up in schools where human teachers told them they could be anything they wanted to be. The Morath population had tripled in a decade. For the first time in centuries, they were not merely surviving, they were thriving. And at the center of it all stood Vel. He was Ambassador Vel now, the official representative of the Morath-Earth Alliance. He wore the formal robes of his people, decorated with symbols of both Morath heritage and Earth citizenship. His compound eyes, once dull with resignation, now shone with purpose and pride. Today, he stood before the Interstellar Coalition to deliver a speech that would be remembered for generations. The Great Council chamber was full. Representatives from every major species sat in tiered rows, watching as the small Morath approached the central podium. Many of them still did not understand what had happened. Many of them still believed that Earth's behavior was foolish, emotional, doomed to fail. They were about to learn otherwise. 10 years ago, Vel began, his voice clear and strong, I was nothing. I was a translator on a human ship, invisible and forgotten, expecting nothing from life except more of the same. I had served other species for decades. They never learned my name. They never asked about my family. They never wondered if I was hungry or tired or sad. I was a tool to them, nothing more. He paused, looking around the chamber. The elder species watched with cold eyes. But in the back rows where the lesser species sat, he saw tears. Then I met the humans, Vel continued, and everything changed. They gave me food that I could eat. They invited me to their celebrations. They looked me in the eyes and asked me how I was feeling. Small things, you might say, meaningless gestures. But to me they were miracles. For the first time in my life, someone cared. He took a breath. When I discovered the plot to destroy them, I had a choice. I could stay silent and survive, or I could speak and probably die. The logical choice was silence. The safe choice was to do nothing. But I thought about the humans who had shown me kindness, and I realized that I could not let them be harmed. Even if it cost me my life, I had to try to save them. And then they saved me instead. Vel's voice wavered, but he pressed on. The Calith Empire demanded my execution. The coalition agreed. Every rule, every law, every tradition said that I should die. But the humans refused. They risked war. They risked their place in this coalition. They risked everything for me, a Morath, an insect, a nothing. Captain Una Park looked into the face of an empire and said 5 words that changed my life forever. Vel is crew, Vel is family. In the audience, Admiral Una Park sat in the Earth delegation, her hair gray now, her face lined with age. But her eyes were the same as they had always been, fierce and kind and unbreakable. She smiled at Vel, and he felt his heart swell with love. You have asked us, Vel said, turning to address the elder species directly, why humans do what they do. You have called them emotional, irrational, dangerously sentimental. You have said that their attachment to lesser species will be their downfall. You have waited 10 years for them to fail, for their kindness to destroy them. He spread his 4 arms wide. Look around you. Look at the species who now stand with Earth. Look at the loyalty that humans have earned simply by treating others with respect. Look at what kindness has built. We are not weak allies. We are not charity cases. We are grateful people who will never forget what Earth has done for us. The Morath will defend humanity until our last breath. The Dreth will work beside them until their last strength. The Kali will serve with them until their last day, not because we were forced to, not because we were bought, but because we were loved. Vel's voice rose. You ask why humans protect the forgotten. The answer is simple. They remember what it was like to be alone. They remember what it was like to be small and scared and told they did not matter. They were once like us, struggling to survive on a single world, looking up at stars full of species who did not care if they lived or died. They remember that pain, and they have sworn never to make another feel that way. He lowered his arms and spoke quietly now, but every word carried to the farthest corners of the chamber. That is why they will inherit the stars. Not because they are the strongest, not because they are the most advanced, but because they understand something you never learned. They understand that power built on cruelty will always crumble, but power built on love will last forever. The chamber was silent. No one spoke. No one moved. Then slowly, the lesser species in the back rows began to stand. The Dreth rose first, their heavy bodies straightening with pride. The Kali followed, their gray faces wet with tears. The Vexi, the Morath, the dozen other forgotten peoples who had found shelter under Earth's wings. One by one, they rose to their feet, and then they began to applaud. It started soft and grew louder, thundering through the chamber, drowning out the stunned silence of the elder species. It was the sound of the forgotten finding their voice. It was the sound of the galaxy changing. Admiral Una Park rose to her feet and saluted Ambassador Vel. Her crew, scattered throughout the Earth delegation, did the same. Vel bowed his head, overcome with emotion. Later that night, he returned to his home world. It was not a dying rock anymore. The sun burned bright and steady, stabilized by human technology. Cities gleamed on the surface, built with human help and Morath hands. Children played in parks where flowers grew, flowers that had never existed on this world before humans came. A young Morath girl approached him as he walked through the central square. She could not have been more than 5 years old, her shell still soft and new. She looked up at him with curious eyes. "Ambassador Vel?" she asked. "My teacher told us about you. She said you were the first. She said you were the one who started everything." Vel knelt down so that he was at her level, the way Una had once knelt for him. "I was just one person," he said gently. "I made one choice. The humans did the rest." The girl tilted her head. "Why did they help us? My teacher said we used to have nothing. She said no one cared about the Morath. Why do the humans care?" Vel looked up at the sky. High above, human ships patrolled the darkness, guarding this world and its people. Not as conquerors, not as masters, but as family. "Because I was kind to them once," he said softly. "A long time ago, when I had nothing to give, I gave them the only thing I had, my loyalty, and they never forgot." The girl thought about this for a moment. Then she smiled. "I want to be kind like that," she said. "I want to be like the humans." Vel felt tears in his eyes. "So do I," he said. "So do we all." He stood and watched as the girl ran back to her friends, laughing and playing under a sun that would never fade. The future stretched out before them, bright and full of possibility. This was what kindness had built. This was what loyalty had earned. This was the reward beyond imagination, and it was only the beginning.